is the Go Gopher Podcast, episode number 124. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. We're talking Golden Gopher baseball this week, and we're absolutely thrilled to have brand new head baseball coach Ty McDevitt join us this week. I've known Ty since he was in high school, and I'm happy he's getting this opportunity to be the new baseball coach at Minnesota. Baseball means a lot to him and to his family. Gopher baseball means a lot, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing about his journey up the coaching ladder. Our Go Gopher podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no cost, no obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union is also a big sponsor of our Go Gopher podcast. Life math is complicated, and Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union makes it easier with local financial experts available to help in person or virtually. Go to affinityplus.org/Go Gophers for more info. They also have an award-winning mobile app, so check that out as well. We're podcasting episode 124 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can do so. It's free to listen at any time. In fact, you can go back and listen to previous weeks as well. Last episode, for example, we had two of the top Gopher track and field athletes who are competing this week in the NCAA championships in Oregon. Go back and have a listen. This week, we're talking Golden Gopher baseball with the 31-year-old now in charge of the Gophers, head coach Ty McDevitt. More with him next.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
Beta Bay Boat Club offers a limited number of season-long memberships in our private club and half-day or full-day pontoon boat rentals on Lake Minnetonka. Members have the opportunity to play on luxurious pontoon boats as well as a variety of well-appointed deck boats, speedboats, and offshore boats. Our daily pontoon boats are deluxe, custom-built boats with many amenities and comfortable seating for up to 14 people. Beta Bay Boat Club, Country Club Boating, 24 years in business and voted Minnesota's best 3 years in a row. Please visit us at betabayboatclub.com for more information. We look forward to welcoming you this summer.
It's episode 124 of the Go Gopher podcast. We are talking Golden Gopher baseball with brand new head coach Ty McDevitt. And Coach, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's been what, about 2 weeks as we talked, 2.5 weeks?
Yeah, it feels like a month in some aspects, and it feels like 2 days in some other aspects. So yeah, it's been quick here, but yeah, about 2 weeks today.
How has the last? I'm guessing it's going to be a 4 or 5 week stretch when you factor in. I'm sure there were interviews and the process, and you wind down, and you're hoping you get it, and then you find out you get it. What's the last month been like for Ty McDevitt?
Well, it started off, slow, I guess. Just the season wrapped up. There was an interview process that took place. To my understanding, nothing was going to happen really fast. Everybody had told me around here that Mark Hoyle likes to move fast. I didn't realize how fast he likes to move until, at 9 o'clock at night, I got a phone call from him, and he said, "Hey, you're going to be the next head baseball coach here." So, I thought I was going to have a week to just kind of, do some yard work, clean up some stuff at the office, take care of a few things on the home front, but we jumped right into it, and I love every bit of it.
Yeah. Here you are. So Coach Anderson announced prior to the season. So how much, if at all, did the season as it's working on? I mean, obviously you were probably one of many who now viewed that you wanted to send John out on a good note, but also, hey, this is an aspiration. So how did the season go with kind of that dual situation last season, also trying to do what you could do to impress whoever it might be that would be making decisions.
Yeah. So when John had announced his retirement around Thanksgiving time, I sent a text to Mark and to Peyton, and I just said, hey, I'm interested in the job, something that I've always wanted to do. It's an interest of mine. I think I can help. And kind of left it at that.
Yep.
And they sent me a text message back and said, hey, thanks for the update. We'll keep you in the loop. And after that, it was pretty easy for me, but I just made a commitment to doing what I've always done, and that's put my head down and go to work. So there really wasn't a lot of discussion about it throughout the course of the year. Towards the end of the year, it started to become a little bit more, of a piece that guys started to talk about, obviously with John's celebration and all the stuff that was going on. It became a little bit more real that something was going to happen at some point. But like I said, I made a commitment to just going to work every day. I've got enough stuff on my plate from a pitching side of things.
Yeah.
We're trying to win as many college baseball games as we possibly can. There's not a lot of time in there to have other interests and hobbies and try to get promoted. It just really doesn't work like that. So my focus went very quickly from trying to win as many college baseball games as we can to impressing people in the interview process, and then from there, I suppose they say the rest is history. Yeah.
And here we are. You're making your debut on the Go Gopher podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be the best thing that's happened since you've been
It
hired.
is. Yeah. Number one.
Well, so you said the season was over and you thought there'd be some quiet time, and maybe there was for a minute. Then you did the interview. Take me through that process and share what you want. I don't know how secretive it has to be, but who was all involved, if you want to share that, and how did that go? Did you feel like, okay, I have a chance here? I felt I did okay. And then the timing to that 9:00 call you referenced.
Sure. So if I'm remembering this right, the interview happened on a Monday. And it was procedural, right? Not super baseball laden. It was a lot of your typical interview questions. And I thought I had a good interview. I had a chance to express some of the things that I wanted to do at the program, was able to convey my passion for Gopher baseball and for Gopher athletics in general. So I thought it went well. But again, you don't leave those interviews with them telling, hey, here's where you're at in the rankings right now. So again, I just moved on. I did the best that I could, said what I needed to say. And then the Tuesday following, I had a meeting scheduled on my Google Calendar with Mark. And I said, well, this is going to go one of two ways. It's the athletic director. Either it's bad or it's good. So we had a good conversation. He was out at the Big Ten meetings in L.A., and we had a good conversation. It was brief. We talked about the baseball program, the vision for the future, all of that type of stuff. And then he quickly said, hey, I got to jump to another meeting. If you have any questions, shoot me a text, give me a call, whatever. So I thought, okay, well, I certainly didn't get disqualified, but maybe there's something here. And about 15 minutes later, Peyton called and said, hey, you're going to be the next head coach of the University of Minnesota baseball team. And I went straight into business mode, and I haven't really ventured out since then. So it happened quickly, and that's probably the way that I would have, hoped it would.
Yeah.
It didn't give me a lot of time to think about it. Didn't give me a lot of time to second guess what I was doing. My family, my wife, super supportive every step of the way. That wasn't a question. I didn't have to beg her. She was more excited than I was, and I was giving her the universal sign for give me a pen and paper, because I got to write this stuff down to make sure that I know what I'm getting myself into.
That's awesome. And so what was the emotion when Peyton delivered that news?
Like I said, I just, it's the same way I'm in the dugout. It's just straight business mode.
Yeah.
I do have the ability to go deep, and I am at the core an emotional person, but in situations like that, I've just, I defer to my business mind, my business mode. And it was, like I said, straight down to crunching numbers, making sure that, okay, I'm taken care of, but can I hire a quality staff? Can I get a group of guys in here from a coaching staff standpoint that can lead this program in the direction that I envision it needs to go? And so I went straight into that, and then obviously straight into all the procedure of making sure that we check in with all the guys on the current team and make sure we've got a stable roster. So the last 2 weeks, I haven't lacked things to do. I've gotten a lot of calls. I've gotten a lot of text messages. We've dealt with a lot of our own guys on the current team. We've started to look in the portal and in the junior college ranks to see if we can fill some holes on our current depth chart. So it's been fast paced. There hasn't been a lot of time to sit back and really reflect on it. And right now I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So your wife was there. So she was kind of finding out as you were finding out, and you were jotting these notes down and you got it done. So I'm sure you mentioned she was happier than you were, more excited. Who was the first call you made then to tell?
I called my parents.
I figured.
Yeah. I called my parents. And I called my mom. And I've learned that calling mom is always the best idea. Calling dad was, I've gotten scolded for that a few times. Why does dad always get the call? Why can't you call me? So I called mom, and luckily dad was right next to her. So I said, hey, I don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to tell you guys before anybody that I got the job. Our family's going to be able to stay in town. That was a big deal for Grandma and Grandpa. So then I said, hey, I got to go. We'll follow up later. And honestly, I haven't had a chance to follow up much with them because I've been so busy. But they're my biggest fans, and obviously my family in general has just been super supportive along the way.
Yeah, because you mentioned you get to stay in town because let's face it, you were in a bit of limbo there. If you don't get the job, there's a chance you won't have a job, right? They're going to bring in somebody. If they bring in somebody else, that person's likely got his own idea of who he wants. Now, it could be you, but it's more likely it might not be. So that I think people don't understand sometimes
the reality
of coaching, right?
It's the reality of college sports and being a coach in general that, you never can get too attached to a certain place, especially as an assistant. You've got to be willing to move if you want to advance your career. And very few people have been able to do what I've done here, and that's play at the same institution that you started coaching at, and now I'm a head coach at. So it's really unique. And I expected at some point there we would have had to have a hard conversation about moving to a different place, potentially somewhere different in the country. So we're blessed. We obviously love where we're at right now, love being close to family, and I get to come to the same university that I went to and that I'm so prideful of.
In your hometown.
Exactly.
Right. And baseball is a bit of your family business. I don't know if it's still how it still works. I remember you taught my kid when he was 10 and 11 and 12 years old. I remember the old cages. Does that still exist?
Well, the old cages doesn't exist. I don't know. They're making popcorn there or something now. I have no idea what's in that building. But the current cages does exist. It's down in Burnsville. My older brother runs that. Okay. And they've got a handful of different club organizations that work out of there. They've got a soccer entity that works out of there. It's baseball. The business has been in my blood for a very long time now, and in my family's blood. Yeah.
How did the whole family then? That's got to be awesome. You come up. When my son was 10, 11 years old, you might have still been in high school. You were teaching him how to catch. You were teaching him how to pitch.
Sounds about
I think
right.
you were like a senior.
That
in
sounds
high school,
about right. Yeah.
So you're coaching as a player back then, right?
And it's funny because I had no intentions of ever getting into coaching long term. I really didn't. I enjoyed doing some instructional work in high school. Like I said, my family had a business down in Lakeville that's in Burnsville now. So I started to work with athletes like your son. In sort of one-off scenarios, and that evolved into more small group lessons. And then we would, develop some teams that would go out and compete. But not at any point did I sit back and say, oh, this is what I want to do as a career. Really not until I got hurt in college. And I had my Tommy John surgery. It forced me to take a year off, pump the brakes on maybe all the dreams and aspirations of playing at the next level, that I realized that I had a really keen, desire and excitement for not just coaching, but kinesiology, the way the human body works, and psychology, the way the body works in that aspect as it pertains to sport. So again, I think, you look back at a lot of people's careers, and there was a turning point in there somewhere that they didn't know was a turning point. And for me, that was getting Tommy John surgery. Forced me to pump the brakes, had to hit timeout and really figure out what was important to me.
Yeah, and then baseball became the family business even more.
Exactly. You got it.
And then your path has been unique, too, because you started as a volunteer assistant here, right? Now, take me through that path, and then eventually you weaved your way up here to now you're the head of the program.
Well, the circumstances were so unique because we had, in 2016, Todd Oakes, who is the former pitching coach, he was dying of leukemia.
Right. One of the all-time great pitching coaches in college.
One of my favorite people of all time. And he was dying. He was in hospice towards the end of the year. And throughout the course of that season, we didn't have a pitching coach. And I remember early on, actually leading into that year, John had called me and, in some ways was begging me to come back, definitely not because I was going to be the best pitcher on the mound, but because he needed some leadership on the pitching staff. It was a 5th year for me because, like I said, I had taken a medical red shirt from the Tommy John surgery. So I decided to come back, and it was a good opportunity for me to obviously pitch another year, but it was also a good opportunity for me to work with some guys and continue to be able to do what I was passionate about, and that was develop guys and work with them and structure practice plans and keep a chart in the dugout and give guys feedback where it was due. So it was a unique role. I was a sort of a player coach in some aspects. And then at the end of the season, John was trying to figure out, what do I do next here? What do I do next? And it took the full summer. I had actually started North Star Baseball Club, which still exists now, run by Mike Kwasnicka, who's an alumni of the program as well. But I started North Star Baseball Club. I decided that was going to be the next step forward. And it was probably late August, maybe even early September, when John called me and he said, "Hey, I want to bring you back here to run the pitching staff. It's going to be in a volunteer capacity. You can still do what you need to do from a North Star standpoint, assuming that it all checks out compliance-wise. But we'd like to get you back in the dugout and take care of these guys." And so I did that for a couple years, 2017, 2018. And then 2018, Rob Fornacier retired. And so a position on the staff opened up, and John immediately hired me to a full-time role. So I spent the 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 seasons in that role that I was in the pitching as a pitching coach. And obviously here I am now.
And here you are, the head coach. You mentioned that you're in the dugout too. You're kind of have the business. You've got the fire, but you also have this calm, cool, collected nature about yourself. Do you think you got that from John Anderson? Because is he a little that way too? It would seem to me.
Yeah, I would say he's like that. Yeah. In no way can I claim to be the Dalai Lama that John is. He is just so even keeled. I definitely have become more subdued. I call it my woosah, over the course of my career. And as I've matured and as I've seen things, I don't react as aggressively to them as I would have early on in my career. But I'm a fiery competitor. I'm passionate about winning. I'm passionate about, developing players. And so I think to be authentically me, that does come out at times. I've definitely done a better job of finding when the best place is for it to come out.
There's times for it.
If it comes out every inning, you're in a bad spot.
Right.
You're in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a time and place certainly to do what you do. It's interesting with John. He was 26 when he got the job. And I think generally, I thought this at times, I'm like, well, that probably will never happen again, right? That a 26-year-old who was a volunteer assistant then moves up, gets the job. And while you were a little more accomplished, you're 31, started as a volunteer. I mean, the paths are pretty similar. So indeed, it is a potential that, hey, even in today's day and age, it can be that way. And I think it's a cool path. You think about what he did and then what he accomplished. And now, I mean, I'm not going to put pressure on you to become the all-time winningest coach in the Big Ten, but,
no
there is a similar similar nature to it.
Sure. And I think you talked to John, and I think he probably saw a lot of the same qualities in myself that Dick Siebert did in him. Again, we're not the same person. We don't have the same personality. We lead differently. We compete differently. That's not a right or wrong thing. And that's one of the lessons that I've learned from him is that there's no right way to be a leader. There's no right way to compete. Everybody does that differently, and trying to find who you have that you're working with and trying to extract the best out of them is a true leadership quality. It's not trying to mold everybody into some version of you. Some phony version of you is usually what it ends up being. So, it's a unique path, but it's one that's not unfamiliar to Gopher baseball. And I think it's a really unique opportunity to be able to bridge a lot of generations of alumni and of people that have been a part of the program here ever since John started.
Right. Yeah, you get a Minnesota man coaching Minnesota baseball. That's good. good.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. Let me talk for a minute about one of our sponsors, and then we'll talk more Gopher baseball here. We want to thank Affinity Plus. They're your local credit union, proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. If you're a current Gopher student or a proud Gopher alum, that makes you eligible to join this financial. They want to build a meaningful banking relationship, and they will always put you first. You can meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide. There's one near campus here in University in Minneapolis. You can learn more and find other ways to connect. Go to their webpage, affinityplus.org/go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/go Gophers. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA, and we thank them for their support of the Gophers and of the Go Gopher podcast. John Anderson publicly said he endorsed you. What'd that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it means everything. John and I have always had a tremendous relationship. What he's done for me, not just in my career as an athlete and as a coach, but what he's done for my family and the man that he's made me, it can't be overstated. It really can't be. I have a hard time when people ask that question, about what John means to me and what his endorsement means to me, because there really truly isn't words for it. And I think anybody that's been around John, that's played for John, they have a hard time finding words for John.
But they know, right?
They know. It's an aura. It's a feeling. It's the comfort that he gives you in being able to do your job at the highest level. And I mean, simply put, it means everything to me. I love the guy to death. He's done so much for my career and for my family. And obviously it's a relationship that is so close to me.
You mentioned that not every leader is going to have the same style. Well, the style of John, and I'm sure it has, varied over the years, but there's a certain way of Gopher baseball. So my question is the new head coach now, what can you take from the certain way John wants and ran the program, and I'm sure as he looks forward, it's kind of his pet now, would want to see it continue, but also in a different way. How can it be different to continue and forge down the path of success?
Well, I think a few things that jump out to me right away with that is John always had fundamental baseball teams. We played fundamental baseball. We caught the ball well. We threw the ball well. We threw strikes. We put the ball in play. We didn't strike out. Those are all things that need to and will continue as hallmarks of this program. Some areas that might be a little bit different just with the current landscape of college sports in general, with the influx of people coming and going to the transfer portal, it's harder and harder to find stable rosters. So naturally, you're going to have some changes in development that happen there where you're talking about quicker development cycles on players. You used to have Rob Fornacier, his old school saying was that, freshman year, don't expect a lot. Sophomore year, expect a little something. Junior year, they're probably going to get drafted.
Yeah,
and that was the typical course of a high school kid coming to the University of Minnesota. And now you need to target guys that can come in and help you right away. So I don't know if there's so much of a philosophical difference in the way that we will approach the baseball game. I think baseball is baseball, and if you throw strikes and you field the baseball and you put the ball in play on defense and put pressure on them, those are all aspects that just won't change. But maybe the way that we manage rosters will be a little bit different, and certainly the way that we expect guys to come in and compete right away.
How hard is that too now with, first of all, it's always been a challenge, right, with baseball. Is it 12 scholarships?
11.7, yeah.
I knew it was around there.
Yeah.
And you got a roster of sometimes maybe, 30 or 40? I don't know. What is it? What is preferable?
We're at about 36, yeah.
So, you may divide it differently than Iowa or Michigan or what have you. So it's always been a challenge, right, to figure out how we're going to construct a roster, because this guy's getting a bigger scholarship there. We'd like him, but we got to let him go because we got other needs or whatever.
Yes.
Now you've got name, image, and likeness, and there's some schools in the South that have money that is just like they got a printing press. So how are those challenges? NIL, the scholarship limits anyway, which was always a case in terms of constructing that roster to get guys that can be good right away.
Well, you referred to my business background. That's helpful. That's helpful,
right.
Being able to read profit win loss sheet or a cash flow sheet or a scholarship and aid sheet. Those are very valuable skills right now in today's game. It's not just about being able to hit a fungo or teach somebody how to throw a breaking ball. You've got to have all those skills right now to be able to juggle a roster, to manage aid, to manage NIL money, and obviously go find willing participants in regards to donors that are going to contribute to your program at a high level and be able to see the on-field product change.
Yeah. And you mentioned you were a part of North Star, and there's all kinds of good club teams now out there. My son went through the MASH, I think, Tom and
Great
Steve
program,
and those guys. And then there's the Blizzard, and there's, I don't know, there's a bunch of them, right? Kids I coached, some of my kids coming up, they one or two played for North Star as well. How has that changed Gopher baseball, do you think?
Well, it's changed the total landscape of amateur baseball in general. The difficulty is you used to be able to go out and watch a Legion baseball game, whether it was in Minnetonka or in New Ulm, and you could sit at the same field for days on end and watch all the best players in the state come through. Now, our recruiting, we've got to go to Indianapolis. We got to go to Atlanta, Georgia. We've got to go to Chicago. We've got to go to these places nationally where they have these national tournaments that the club teams participate in. And sometimes you're recruiting a kid that lives 10 miles down the street
Valley,
from you.
And you're in Atlanta
exactly,
recruiting, right?
But we're in Atlanta watching him pitch.
Yeah.
And so I think the more that we can do as a state here to try to find opportunities for those club teams to participate in events and tournaments, maybe out at Siebert Field, that will bring, the best players in our state from an amateur perspective to our doorstep is only going to be helpful to us, but also to the club team so that they're not having to travel. No parent wants to be on the road every weekend throughout the course of the summertime. So there's going to be some balance here that I think is struck within the next couple of years in regards to club baseball. But when you look at club baseball in our state, nearly all of the programs are run by Gopher baseball alumni. Yeah. And if you study that and the relationships that we have with them, they're just so instrumental. They're so pivotal in getting the best players here and making sure that our name and our brand is at the forefront of what every kid wants to do growing up.
In a weird way, too, is there, with that, there's more good baseball players now at the high school and club level than ever, right, in Minnesota. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. But in a weird way, has that, I don't want to say hindered, but back in the old days, John didn't have to recruit against Florida or Missouri or Ole Miss or whatever, right? Because there's no clubs.
Yeah.
Florida's not coming up to the Twin Cities to watch a game in 19-degree weather in April. Now, as you mentioned, these kids are going to Cincinnati, they're going to Indy, they're going to Atlanta, they're going to Dallas. Heck, they're going to Cedar Rapids to play games.
Exactly.
And these college coaches are, this kid from name the city, Lakeville, Blaine, he's 92 on the gun. That's a kid John Anderson 100 out of 100 times is going to get in 1988, right?
Yep.
Maybe not now.
All the time.
So, it's changed. There's more good players, but it's a trickier situation maybe now.
It is, and I think it comes back to the tried and true hallmark of what John and Rob and T.O. did when they were here, and that was find guys who want to be here.
Yep.
Right? It sounds simple, but it's more difficult than it really seems. So you've got to find people that want to be here. They want to be here for the right reasons. They understand what Gopher baseball is and the well-rounded experience that entails. We're not getting guys to be just baseball players. They're coming here to get a meaningful degree. They're coming here to have a great experience when it comes to student-athlete welfare. They're coming here to be developed at an extremely high level. Okay, we're not a professional team. We get guys. We understand they need to get better. We have a development plan for them. We put it to work day one, and sometimes before they're on campus. And then they come here to compete in the Big Ten. And that's a big deal right now, especially with the overall and changing landscape of college sports. Playing in the Big Ten is a big, big, big deal. So, as it pertains to recruiting, I talked about this, the other day in my press conference, and I think it's so important to note. A lot of people like to look at where the kid initially goes. Where does the high school recruit go immediately out of high school? I like to look at where he ends up. Where does he finish his career? Where does he get drafted out of? Okay. Recruiting for us has changed in a lot of ways because you might initially have to hear no. Hey, I'm going to go to Alabama. I'm going to go to LSU. I'm going to go to one of the southern schools that you've brought up. But they go there and it's not the experience they were looking for, right? They thought the South was going to be warm and beautiful and everything was going to be great. They go down there and it wasn't the well-rounded experience that they were looking for. So being able to maintain and develop relationships in the recruiting process, that even if you get told no immediately, they're going to be your first call when they get in the portal eventually, because
maybe they get homesick.
Statistics show that a large percentage of those guys aren't going to make it at that school for one reason or the next, and so we want to develop a meaningful relationship so that when they understand, okay, I've been there, it's not a good fit for me, I want to go back to Minnesota. It's a very different deal that they've got going on there. Yeah,
it's a unique time for that too. I mean, you think hockey's done that forever, not necessarily, hey, go to another school, but we're going to stay in touch. They send 18-year-olds to juniors to play for 2 years and say, keep proving that you're good, and then when it's time, we'll bring you on board. It's a similar thing, but it's not a great parallel. But hockey's been patient that way, not just Minnesota hockey, but all hockey. You
have to be patient.
It's a unique deal, that's for sure. All right, let's talk about the value of U.S. Bank Stadium. Didn't get to play there this year. Could you tell too? I mean, because I don't think people understand the toll that travel takes and all that stuff. And what's the future there? Do we know? I know John was, last time he was on this podcast, he was pretty concerned about whether you guys are going to be able to play your games and some big time tournaments as you always had in the Metrodome.
Yeah, so U.S. Bank Stadium's obviously a true home field advantage for us. It's a comfortable place. We're able to set up shop there for 6 weeks. Guys have a full locker room. We've got a full nutrition bar down there for them. It really is a home field for us. It's not just a place to play locally. It's a home field. So the benefit of it is incredible for our program. This past year, we were on the road 11 out of 15 weekends. We were on the road for the first 7, and that takes a toll on everybody. It takes a toll on your players. It takes a toll on the coaching staff. It makes it more difficult to perform in the classroom. Again, not an excuse, but definitely makes it more difficult. It's a reality of it. So having U.S. Bank Stadium long-term is a tremendous asset for our program and is going to be necessary for us moving forward. So what's going on there in terms of the debate that's taken place and how that's all played itself out with the legislature and the sports commission is something I haven't been involved in yet. I know our administration is working their butts off to try to get everything figured out there, but definitely looking forward to playing at U.S. Bank Stadium long term.
Yeah, and that has been when you think back to the Metrodome, that was a backbone to part of what made those Gopher teams really good back in that day too, because they got home games and practice there sometimes, right? And now if you're traveling to Texas or Florida or California, this, even one less practice day for 7 straight weeks because you're traveling and not taking ground balls, it adds up, right?
Makes a big difference. Yeah.
So there are some unique things with that. So hopefully people come to their senses and you're going to be able to do your tournaments and play some, because I think teams got a kick out of coming in there to play too, like other teams from all over the country.
I get calls every day, people wanting to come play at U.S. Bank Stadium. It's a unique, very cool atmosphere, and playing baseball in Minnesota in the months of February and March, who would think you could do that? So everybody wants to come.
And aside from the Gophers, on a sidebar, it's important. There's a lot of D2, D3 schools that utilize that thing. I went and watched my old high school coach D3 down in Iowa, and they were playing
Luther College.
I went to Luther. My old high school coach was the rival at Wartburg. So I've actually watched Luther play there a few times, and then I went and watched Wartburg. Don't tell my Luther buddies that, but he's now retired, but their head coach was my high school coach. Great guy, Joel Holtz, went to a mini D3 World Series. Anyway, we came midnight. We're watching, and this was just before the pandemic, so whatever that was, 2020. We're watching. They played at like midnight and 1:30 or something like that. Another buddy and I went and watched our old high school coach. But that's important.
It's so important,
right?
It's so important
for baseball in general.
It is. It is. Yeah, we need to have that back at some point here, because you talk to Division III, Division II junior college coaches in the region, and having to go south every weekend for them sometimes isn't even in their budget, right? So we can handle it. That's an area that we can handle. But when you talk to the Augsburgs and the St. Olafs and schools like that, being able to play home games, even if it is at midnight, that's so instrumental in developing not just a good baseball team, but a thriving, amateur baseball scene in Minnesota.
For sure. And you know what? Those guys and those players I forget even who Wartburg was playing, they ended up winning that game. They're going to talk, whether they won or lost, they're going to say, remember when we played at midnight at the Viking Stadium? 20 years from now, they'll be talking about playing in that facility. And we, actually at Luther, not to get too far off the subject, but when I was there, we played some games at the Metrodome. Okay. My best play as an outfielder came at the Metrodome. I was in left field running to catch a ball, and it goes through the lights.
Oh, yeah.
Totally lost it, and I wasn't sure what to do, so I just kept running. Where I thought it might hit, and it comes out of the lights, I catch it, and the dude, it was a guy from Northwestern in St. Paul.
Okay.
We were playing them, and he just figured that the dummy in left field lost it, so he's running, and we doubled him up. I caught it, turned, we got him at second. It was my best defensive play. Usually I was able to play outs into doubles when I was in the outfield, but in this particular play, I got it there. But those were, we've talked about that. I remember how sore my knees were playing on that turf.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I was healthy as a young guy could be, but man, that night after playing a doubleheader and then the next day playing, I forget who we played the next day, Loris, I think, in a conference team. But anyway, that's important for baseball. We got to get people to come to their senses and let that happen in the spring.
No doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Changing times. We talked about NIL, and at a time when record revenues are coming into schools, I suppose there are some baseball folks at the college level. I don't know how concerned, but what is the future of how this is all going to? And again, you're 2 weeks on the job, so I'm going to throw this big topic at you. But what do you think college baseball as a whole, with with revenues generally high, but NIL and non-revenue and all this stuff? What do you think?
Well, I know for a fact that college baseball nationally is in a great spot. It's to my knowledge the second highest generating NCAA championship that they have. College baseball is super healthy right now. Now, as we enter into a new, ever-changing landscape, everything changes day to day, and I'm finding that out pretty quickly. When you think you got answers, you don't have answers, and that's
the
okay.
Answers change.
Exactly, they change overnight sometimes. Sometimes they change, by midday. So it just underscores the importance of being able to be flexible, being able to be dynamic, and having some values in regards to how you're going to run your program. And once you have that set, once you have your feet set, then you're at least able and prepared to take on whatever challenges are thrown at you.
The disparity is not the right word, but in terms of some of those southern schools, one, they have some built-in advantages just climate-wise, sure. And then they have some advantage just in terms of, the stadiums are full, they have NIL. How do you try to compete against that with the Big Ten? And I mean, this is a major program, so how do you, their folks are saying, hey, go beat those teams. How do you do that?
Well, it's twofold. Number one, you got to get recruits to understand what they're getting into at the University of Minnesota, right? It is truly a different experience. And we've got decades and decades of alumni that will attest to that. Yeah, it's a different experience. You get to play in the Big Ten. You get a meaningful degree, like I've said before. But you're playing in a program that values development, not just development on the field, but development off the field and development of you as a human. Those aspects will never change. And so that's super important to convey that to recruits that, there's a lot of places you can go that maybe have, quote unquote, better geography, better climate than we have, that have bigger stadiums, that sell out more often. But you're not going to get the same experience. And in recruiting, we're trying to find just a few guys that want to be here for the right reasons. We don't need 150 guys.
Right.
We just need 35.
Yeah. And 5 can make a difference. Like you get the 5 right guys, you're from here to here, right?
Exactly.
I mean, possibly, right? So that's the beauty of it. What's your recruiting philosophy? Will it change from maybe what the program has been? More aggressive, similar? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it all pertains to roster management. I would expect our roster management philosophy is going to be a little bit more aggressive. It has to be with where we're at right now. And what does that look like? I'm not certain yet, but we're definitely going to have to be able to have spots to go get guys who are going to make an immediate impact from the portal, from junior colleges, even from the Division II and Division III ranks. There's a lot of good baseball players there that are looking to make that jump. So I think always having a stable roster, but keeping an eye on the future and understanding what's coming down the road, what are your draft implications, and being able to keep enough space in a given year so that you can go get some of those guys using whether it's scholarship or NIL money or just the experience that we can offer here. That's imperative.
Yeah, because certainly there's kids out there that want to be Gophers.
For sure.
Then the question is, okay, well, he wants to be a Gopher. He can't play, so he's out, right? Like, that'd be me.
Yeah.
And then there's guys, he wants to be a Gopher. We got to get him. And then the kid, and we might have to do some NIL or whatever. And then there's a kid maybe in the middle that he wants to be a Gopher, and he's going to come. It didn't care what the NIL or the scholarship is.
Yeah, you're right. That's about how they're broken down. It's and obviously on the far end of the spectrum, like you're talking about, you get a kid who wants to be a Gopher but has to make a business decision, right? If it comes down to hundreds of thousands of dollars or a significant gap in what you can offer from an aid perspective, that makes a difference. So that's where you start talking about Dinkytown athletes and NIL and all the different buckets that you want to be able to fill up there so that you can keep guys who want to be here for the right reasons from having to make a business decision.
Right. Yeah. And then you love the guys that want to be here, right? Because they're going to play with that extra heartbeat.
Exactly.
And they can be team leaders. I'll put you on the spot here, and maybe you're not comfortable answering it. Do you know how the coaching staff will shake out?
Well, I'm working through the HR process right now. I'm confident in saying that we're going to elevate Alec Crawford to the pitching coach role. By end of week here, I should have 2 offensive coaches hired. So you can look for, it's probably going to be public here very shortly, but there'll be 2 guys who have experience in the Midwest, who have had a background in the Big Ten, and they're going to do a lot for being able to develop our hitters and our defensive guys.
Yeah, and how much too do you think that helps? I mean, this has been a pretty stable coaching staff and situation for a long time. To maybe all of a sudden, hey, let's, as Mark Coyle once said, shake the tree a little bit, rattle the cage a little bit, get some new voices. Yep. Can that be a help just to kind of kickstart it a little bit?
I think so. We'll find out. I'll tell you that. We'll find out. But I can tell you that we're getting some guys in here who obviously have the technical ability to coach guys, whether it's hitting or on defense. But we've also got a few really good baseball minds that are coming in. And I'm a believer that, yes, there are position coaches. Guys need to have a certain specific skill set to be able to coach a middle infielder versus an outfielder, or teach the offensive, tendencies and all of that type of stuff. But you need ball coaches. You need people who understand baseball, who can make, split-second decisions, and that's so important to have a group of guys that just understand what it's like to compete at a high level and can do it when the lights are on.
Yeah. Well, super, man. This is so much fun. I'm glad you were able to come on the show. I think people will really enjoy listening here, and we're just underway. 2 weeks in, man.
2 weeks in.
Yeah. We'll have you on again soon.
All right. Sounds good.
There he is, the new head coach of the Golden Gophers, Ty McDevitt. It's episode number 124.
My thanks to new Gopher baseball coach Ty McDevitt. I had a lot of fun on this podcast, and hopefully you enjoyed the conversation as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. The Gopher program is no doubt in good hands. Episode number 124 is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and right now, please click the subscribe button to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to subscribe and free to listen at any time. And please share the link to the podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, please give us some positive feedback. We'll talk again next week.